Listen up, my public to private career warriors. If you've been firing off applications into a void, stop it. You don't need to apply to 200 jobs. You need positioning. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how to translate your public sector experience into a private sector brand that gets calls, interviews, and offers. By the end of this content series, you'll have a plain English playbook. Now, notice that I'll be sharing these gems with you over 4 or more pieces because it's just too much to throw at you all at once. So we're beginning today with the 5 biggest differences between public and private sector job markets. I'm Cynthia from HR by NAMTEAK, and I've sat on the candidate side, HR side, and the leadership side as a hiring manager. So this isn't theory that I'm sharing with you. It is a proven way to move from public sector to private impact. So let's tell the truth. 3 traps keep private sector or public sector servants from landing private sector roles. Number one is the spray and pray method. That's where you just mass apply to jobs without positioning or having a positioning strategy based on your skill set. Then number 2 is using generic resumes. That's when you list your duties that you perform, but you fail to show the business impact and the metrics that the things that you do on the job make a positive impact on. Then finally, number 3 is your fear of self-promotion. You mistake clarity for arrogance, and you allow that thinking to cause you to undersell your skills and your value. So we're going to replace each one of these traps with a system that actually moves the needle in your favor. Let's start with this in-depth look at the 5 big differences between the public sector and the private sector work environments. And make sure that you take notes because I'm going to tell you exactly how to translate your public sector experience into private sector career success. So listen, you don't have to become a different person to land a great job in the private sector if you've, to this point, mostly had public sector experience. Believe me, I've done it. I've made the transition. You just have to rename what you do into language that private sector companies recognize. So hold on to your seat. Here's the plain English version of the Big 5 plus exactly how to translate your experience. Number 1, consider what counts as success in the public sector versus the private sector. In public sector, agencies are mission driven. They also protect equity and pride themselves on the laws that they follow and the services delivered. And when I say protect equity, it's those who they serve as well as the employees who provide the products and services. Now, in the private sector companies want to keep their customers happy, keep growing their revenue, continue to cut costs, and move forward faster. So how do you translate your public sector skill into a private sector win in this area? Think about time, quality, stakeholder adoption, cost, and risk. SWOT sayings like or phrases like compliance completed for a phrase like reduced audit findings by 62% or cut processing time by 30%. That's what private sector companies understand. Then, when you're thinking about your resume and how to share this information on your resume, now when you're thinking about how to share your revised resume language, say something like cut policy rollout time by 42% by turning a 14-page memo into a 1-page decision guide and a ready-to-send communications kit. So when you're in your interview, you want to share with your interviewers that you want to create impact, positive impact. So you can say to them, my North Star is to create impact that you can measure. That means creating or reducing errors, creating faster cycle time, and also gaining higher stakeholder adoption. And that will be a drop the mic moment. Next, number 2 is in the public sector. Speed, rules, and risk are where some major differences exist between them and the private sector. So, in the public sector, lots of oversight and documentation is required, and decisions take time by design. And I can fully relate to this because I am currently in the public sector, working in the public sector myself. But for private sector companies, they require faster decisions to be made and to, how can I say it, conduct more experiments or pilot tests, and but still be controlled. So how do you translate your public sector experience in this area to private sector success? You do so by positioning yourself as fast and safe, like I said, by conducting pilot sessions, implementing checklists to keep everybody on track, measuring performance via dashboards, and knowing who your clear owners are or your stakeholders. So show moments when you moved forward without increasing risk for the organization. So on your resume, you can highlight this skill set by listing that you shortened approval cycle from 28 days to 14 days with a tiered review and go/no-go criteria, and it resulted in 0 audit issues. So what does that mean? It means that there used to be a 28-day approval cycle for requests to changes in processes. However, you created a tiered review that went from the bottom of the team creating the recommendation or for the changes in the process, and then you ran it up what we call the chain of command for approval. You identified go criteria, which meant that if certain criteria existed in the process, you could go forward. That was the agreement. That's the agreement between you and your chain of command, who make the final approval or non-approval decisions. But then you also had no-go criteria that you, as the creator or developer of the refined process improvements, that if certain criteria weren't met, then you went back to the drawing board, made some more refinements to help it meet the agreed upon criteria, and then you knew that you could send it up the chain of command for assessment and hopefully approval. And the greatest thing about it is now you're letting people who are reviewing your resume from the private sector know that not only did you reduce the approval time with that tiered review process and the go and no go criteria, but it also resulted in the awesome outcome of 0 audit issues. So that means that you mitigated risk for the organization instead of increasing risk, which is exactly what private sector employers want to see on your resume. They want to see that evidence of it. And you need to be prepared to discuss how you did this. So during your interview, you want to say something like, I shipped version 1 quickly, instrument the outcome, and tighten the loop weekly. It's structured speed. So you're saying the exact same thing during your interview that you've highlighted on your resume, but you're saying it in a different way. So when you ship version 1 quickly, that means that that's the first version. You're going to get a prototype out there to your stakeholders for their assessment. They provide you with feedback because you met the basic criteria of the GO criteria and to move forward. And then when you instrument the outcome, what you're doing is you're allowing that review process. You're also documenting version 1's performance, like you said on your resume, let's say via a dashboard. And then based on the insights that you gain from the dashboard, you tighten the loop weekly by making incremental changes. And guess what? Everybody knows what the processes are, and that's why it's called structured speed. Got it? Hope you do. Then, third big difference between public sector and private sector workplaces or job markets is that there's a difference in how they hire and how employees are advanced in the workplace. So in the public sector, jobs are categorized by job classes or classifications. Formal postings are used to hire new employees or to promote employees, and there are annual step increases that are based on seniority in public sector. Now, conversely, in the private sector, you're a candidate's story plus their skills plus referrals from people who know their work are what get you hired. Then you can make lateral moves often in the private sector, and even though it's a lateral move, many times based on the way that the position, your new position operates, even if it's considered a quote-unquote lateral move, employees in the private sector are often still awarded or rewarded with pay increases even for lateral moves, which is often not the case in the public sector. And then also in the private sector, because titles are not grouped into classifications, there are many more variations of titles that clearly represent the type of work or area of expertise that that particular employee is working in. So how do you translate your approach? Lead with a clear value proposition. And I call this your CVP, and I replace clear with candidate. Lead with a strong candidate value proposition. That's what you bring to the table. Who you help and what processes do you improve? Mirror keywords in real job posts. And my warriors, let me tell you, don't make tailoring your resume more difficult than it needs to be, because that's a mistake that many people make, whether they're pivoting from public to private sector or vice versa, or whether they're just changing, they want to make a move to another job or elevate their career. They make tailoring their resume absolutely too difficult. All you have to do to tailor your resume is to take the exact job descriptions or job postings that for the positions that you plan to apply to, and you tailor your resume by looking at the key words, the key functions of that position, and you sprinkle them truthfully and very naturally throughout your resume. And when you list your bullet points of your achievements and the duties that you perform and your impact, you want to make sure that you utilize those key words from the job posting to represent what you do in your resume. So that's it. It is not rocket science. It just takes a little effort to just read the job posting and see how many of the relevant keywords you already have in your resume, and where you need to beef it up, sprinkle those words truthfully in the appropriate places on your resume, and you've just tailored your resume. And keep up with which one you use to apply to which position. Then also use warm introductions. You have alumni associations from high school, undergraduate school, grad school, professional groups that you're a member of. And if you're not a member of any professional associations, or you're not currently active in alumni groups, then you need to become so. Also, reach out to peers who already hold target roles related to the area of expertise that you are already in or that is of interest to you. And LinkedIn makes that so easy. So you have no excuse for not reaching out to peers. Then also reach out to hiring managers, people who are in leadership roles in those areas, in that area of expertise that you want to break into. So when you're updating and refining your resume, you want to represent this capability in this manner. For your resume header, you want to emphasize your customer success and operations experience. Let's say if that's your area of expertise. Process simplifications, and let me tell you, when you positively impact a company's people, processes, and profits by reducing lead time, reducing approval time, reducing finish time, that's process improvement right there, and process simplification. So that's why you want that in your resume header. You want to represent it in your resume header. Then time to value, the time from conception to going live, or time from conception to generating profits, revenue for the organization, and then adoption. So you're letting the private sector company know that not only are you well versed and capable in customer success and operations, but you also have strong process improvement skills, and you also know how to reduce time to value and how to interact with those stakeholders, including leadership and customers, to gain strong adoption of your ideas. Now, the way that you can take advantage of the warm introductions is you can send direct messages to the contacts who you identify using LinkedIn, Facebook, any of those platforms where you'll find professionals in your area of expertise, or the area of expertise that you want to break into. So what you would do is send them a quick, simple DM, again, not making it more difficult than it needs to be, that simply says, "Hi, I cut onboarding cycle time by 37% with simple playbooks." And then ask them, "Are you open to a 15-minute chat on how your team measures time to value?" Quick and to the point. You told them what you do, and you're asking them if they are open to connecting so that you can discuss this particular business related topic. And yes, you're going to get a lot of no's, but all it takes is what? That one yes, "I have 15 minutes for you." And once you get that one yes, then you can use that to springboard others' interest. And some of those people who initially told you no, once they find out that someone has given you a yes and you helped them to make the necessary changes in their workplace, now their interest is going to be piqued, and they're going to start one by one giving you their 15 minutes to discuss the topic as well. So moving on to the next big difference between public and private sector are pay, benefits, and terms of offers. So in the public sector, there are predictable pay bands, strong benefits and pension, and those strong benefits and pension are what typically cause people who work in the public sector to see it as a stable employer. However, with the recent mass layoffs of public sector employees, it's not seen as being as stable anymore. And that's why a lot of your public to private sector colleagues, maybe even you, because you probably wouldn't be here if you weren't thinking about making a transition yourself. That's why you're looking at the possibility of moving to the private sector. So in the private sector, there's a mix of base salary, bonuses, which typically don't exist in the public sector, and equity, like employee ownership of company stocks or what have you. To a private sector employer, the benefits are going to vary from company to company. And in the private sector, your performance can move pay outside of those annual performance evaluations. So if you do great on a project, then you might find yourself with a higher salary or a very nice bonus once that project proves to be successful. So how do you translate your expectations when you're considering job offers? And this is so important. I want you to pay very close attention, because this can make the difference between your quickly making the transition or and not making the mistake of thinking that it's not a good offer for you. First of all, learn the total comp mix in your target industry. Do your research and find out what types of benefits, what what bonuses are possible for people who work in your area of expertise in the private sector, and what other types of perks might there exist in the private sector for people in your area of expertise. We call it the total rewards consideration. Then, because you're not looking at only your base salary, you're looking at your base salary plus your time off, your potential bonuses, performance-related bonuses, and other types of programs that can save you money, like reduced child care expenses, as well as employee shopping programs and other like valet services like dry cleaning and laundry services and what have you, to make your life easier, that private sector employers may provide or make available to their employees at a reduced cost. So when you crunch the numbers, you might find that it's a much better offer than you thought it was initially. Then tie your results to variable levers. Think about, when you're considering the offer, think about how you will be able to negotiate an even higher salary by touting your ability to gain stakeholder adoption more quickly, how to increase contract renewals that are advantageous to your target company, and how you can continue to reduce costs year over year for operations. All of those you can use to try and negotiate a higher salary from a private sector employer. Then, during your interview, say it like this: I'm evaluating roles in the X to Y range, base salary range. And let me stop here and emphasize to you, always when a private sector employer, even a public sector employer, but you're making this transition from public to private sector, so when an employer asks you what your salary expectations for the position are, make sure you give a range. I learned early in my career, because I made the mistake, I cheated myself out of a higher salary because it was early in my career, just getting started, still a little green, and I gave the recruiter a base salary instead of a range. Always use a range. I recommend at least a $10,000 range if you're seeking like a staff level position. But if you get up there to the entry-level executive levels, or even entry-level management levels, do a $15,000 or more range, 15 to 20,000. I've even seen some people actually use a $50,000 range, which seems crazy, but you just never know. You could land smack dab at the $25,000 midpoint of that $50,000 range, which, can you imagine? That's how some people make in a year. So, earn in a year, as far as pay is concerned, that can make such a big difference in the quality of life that you're able to provide for you and your family. And do not, if you know that your target range is 85,000, for example, or your target salary that you feel you could comfortably live with is 85,000, please do not make 85,000 the top of your range. Make sure that you start at 95,000 and say, I think that 95 to 105,000 would be fair for this role. So guess what? the organization or the recruiter is going to probably try and talk you down, or the hiring manager is probably going to try and negotiate you down. So guess what? If you start off at X being 95,000 up to that the end of that $10,000 range, which is 105,000, you may land at 85,000, or guess what? You could land even higher. You may end up with an offer, a final salary, base salary of 87,500. How's that? I think you would like it. So make sure that you consider your range and be strategic about the range that you give, and let the employer know that you're considering most highly roles where you can move time to value and stakeholder adoption, because that's where the business sees return. Another mic drop moment. They might even pull out an offer before you leave there, or before you get home good. You may have a call saying, hey, we want to talk to you. So keep those tips in mind. Then number 5, which is our final difference, big difference between public sector and private sector, lies in performance or surrounds performance and feedback. So in the public sector, process integrity is emphasized, and performance feedback is typically given in annual cycles. So once or twice, once a year, or even semi-annually. That's when public sector agencies typically provide formal performance feedback. Like, I'm in public sector currently. Our performance evaluations are done like in May, between April and May of each year. Then in the public sector, there may be unions and also collective bargaining agreements in some workplace settings in the public sector. In the private companies, they focus on KPIs, or key performance indicators, and OKRs, which are objectives and key results, including that come from the information that you derive from dashboards where you're tracking performance. Then private sector also emphasizes frequent, ongoing feedback and quicker correction to areas that need improvement. So how do you translate your wins? If you're a public sector employee, or someone who's transitioning to the private sector, how do you translate the wins that you've already achieved so that the private sector employer can understand? You put numbers on your outcomes and you keep them visible. And how do you do that? You indicate the percentage of reduction in costs that you achieved. You also keep them visible by listing those particular measured metrics that you have numbers for at the top of your bulleted list of achievements and duties, what have you. Then you name the metric you owned and the change you drove. So you remember earlier I said, one example was to say that you reduced cost by 37%, or you reduced approval time in one process from 28 days to 14 days. That's an example. First, the name of the metric is approval time, and then the change that you drove was the reduction in the time that it takes to get something approved. So on your resume, you would say something like raised first pass accuracy to 96%. which means that whatever the process was, the first time that you put that process or refined process out there to your stakeholders, that first pass, the first time that it ran its cycle, you increased accuracy to 96%. Maybe it was 92%. Now it's 96%. And you reduced rework, meaning going back and having to do redundant work or rework it to improve it. You reduce that rework requirement by 22% by adding pre-checks like checklists and a weekly SLA review. And SLA stands for Service Level Agreement, which is essentially a contract that you have entered into with your stakeholders that contains the promises of the services, goods and services that you're going to provide to them. And so you do a weekly review of that service level agreement to make sure that you're hitting on all the points of that service level agreement to meet the promised goals and objectives that you told your stakeholders you would be able to help them achieve. Then, during your interview, you can share with your interviewers that, and this is you saying this, give me the metric, whether it's cycle time, acception rate, or adoption, and I'll build the dashboard and the 6-step playbook to move it. That is providing clarity. It's not arrogance. It is simply letting them know that, hey, this is how I can impact your bottom line if I'm given the chance. I've already done it. I've reduced cycle time, which means completion time. I've reduced acception rates, which are error rates. And I've increased adoption, which is stakeholder buy-in for the changes in the process. And you're telling them, I'm not just shooting in the dark. I will build the dashboard to track performance and a 6-step playbook to move the processes in the direction that you want them to go. Guess what? If you're not number one, you're going to be high up there. You're going to be number 2, because the only thing different that someone else, another candidate, could do is to actually have a portfolio where they show what they did, where they show how they impacted business. And that will make them be a step ahead of you. But short of that, let me tell you, you will have knocked their socks off and have a great chance of becoming their selected candidate. So what we want to do is do some quick GovSpeak to BizSpeak swaps. For instance, in the public sector, you might call it a committee meeting. In the private sector, you want to refer to that same meeting as stakeholder alignment with decision rights. In the public sector, you may refer to an approval packet. In the private sector, you want to say lead time reduction with tiered reviews. Public sector is a policy update, but in the private sector, it's a decision framework that cut escalations by 35%. In the public sector, it's a compliance report, but in the private sector, it's audit-ready evidence that resulted in findings that were reduced by 62%. In the public sector, it's training delivered. In the private sector, it's adoption 87% in 60 days. That's the impact that the training that you deliver achieved. And how did you do it? Via micro learning. So adoption 87% in 60 days via micro learning. Then, and that micro learning is relatable in the private sector because you probably have seen articles that talk about how learning needs to be done in manageable chunks, digestible chunks, instead of these grandiose sessions. And that's kind of what I'm doing here for you today. Like I said earlier, dropping, these 5 differences to you, but then breaking this whole strategy down into bite-sized chunks so that you digest it, you take it in, you can come back and review the content again as needed and implement step by step as you go along. Then in the public sector, you have cross-agency coordination, while in the private sector, you have shared playbooks that saved 18 hours a month. So guess what? You just showed how you saved them time. And so those are some examples of transitioning or swapping gov speak for private sector biz speak. So one thing I would encourage you to do is to use a 1-minute translation checklist before you hit apply on your application to private sector jobs, by making sure that you name the lever that you moved, which is either going to be time, quality, adoption, cost, or risk, or revenue and retention, or a combination of any of those. You want to add the number in percent, hours, days, rate, or score. Then number 3, show the method. It's either that you used a playbook that you created, or you implemented a playbook that someone else created. The important thing is that you implemented the steps and you got positive, measurable business results. You conducted a pilot study, you used a dashboard to track performance, you implemented a checklist or a tiered review, which went from concept up to your chain of command. Then use their words, their being private sector. Pull 8 to 12 keywords from the job posting that you're applying to and sprinkle them naturally throughout your resume and cover letter. Then number 5, lead with relevance. Make your top 3 bullets match the role's key performance indicators. That's how you keep your capabilities visible and tailor your resume to that specific job posting. So, what you want to do to pull everything together is you may say that you co-chair a policy committee or managed approvals and training for the new system. But in private sector language, you would say you cut rollout time by 42% by replacing a 14-page policy with a 1-page decision tree and communications kit. You shorten the approval cycle 28 to 14 days, and by using that tiered review, you reached 87% stakeholder adoption in 60 days using 3 micro modules and a quick start guide. Bottom line is, you've already done the hard stuff. You've had the career achievements, whether you're in, although you're in public sector. You've clarified. So now you just need to clarify, align, execute, de-risk, and drive adoption, and keep doing it. Just rename it in numbers and outcomes that private sector use every day. That's the whole transition plan. So know that my goal is to help you transition as easily and as smoothly as possible. So, I have a treat for you. I want you to join me on September 27th and 28th for my free training to help you master your job search. Training is free, but the seats are limited, so registration is required. So what I need you to do is access the link in the description below. And then if you got value from this content, subscribe and click the notification bell so you know when I drop new content. Then share it with others in your network who you know can use it. And do me a big favor and click the thumbs up notification button or the thumbs up button to help me reach more people. And whether you're here for the first time or you've been here before, I'm so glad that you chose my channel. Remember to come back for the rest of this series, which will include my 4-phase career pivot framework, my word-for-word resume and interview scripts, and my 14-day quick start plan to put all of this in motion for your successful career transition. And until next time, remember that you're not starting over, you're pivoting. See you again soon.